What happens when a classical prodigy decides to treat the electric bass not as a background timekeeper, but as a roaring, frontline weapon of mass rebellion? Long before sold-out stadium tours and multiple Grammy Awards became standard for contemporary bass players, the entire concept of the bass as a solo lead instrument simply did not exist in popular culture. One teenager from Philadelphia changed everything by challenging structural record mixing norms, inventing entirely new instruments, and stepping onto international stages with rock royalty. Today, we dissect the jaw-dropping milestones and hidden history of the ultimate low-end pioneer, Stanley Clarke. Before we continue, subscribe now, like this video, comment, and share. Born in Philadelphia in 1951, Stanley Clarke did not initially set out to conquer the musical world on the heavy strings of a double bass. As a young child heavily encouraged by his mother, his initial training began on the delicate fingerboard of a standard acoustic violin. However, nature had a completely different sonic architecture in mind for the young prodigy, as his fingers quickly grew much too large to physically execute intricate patterns on the compact violin neck. After briefly transitioning to the cello and finding it highly uncomfortable to sit with, he walked into a school band room and spotted a massive, abandoned acoustic double bass sitting silently in the dark corner. The moment his hands wrapped around that heavy wood, an unbreakable, lifelong physical connection was instantly forged. He immediately began mastering the demanding physical mechanics of classical repertoire at the Settlement Music School. This early physical transition laid the structural foundation for a technical execution that would soon shock the entire world. As Clarke honed his acoustic technique through his late teens at the prestigious Philadelphia Musical Academy, his absolute ultimate career aspiration was purely classical. He explicitly stated that his primary life goal was to break racial barriers and become one of the very first black acoustic bassists inside the legendary Philadelphia Orchestra. He poured countless hours into refining his bowing precision, note reading, and microtonal pitch adjustments, completely ignoring the commercial pop music charts of the late 1960s. Yet, deep institutional systemic barriers and stagnant traditional mindsets within the classical establishment routinely pushed young black acoustic instrumentalists away from major symphonic chairs. This intense resistance created a massive pool of frustration inside Clarke, who began looking outside the rigid boundaries of Beethoven and Bach for a different outlet. A sudden move to New York City would soon shatter his classical focus forever. Shortly after arriving in the chaotic jazz scene of New York City in 1971, the 20-year-old bassist sat down for a private dinner that altered his psychology completely. He found himself sharing a table with the towering, uncompromising jazz composer and bassist Charles Mingus, whose intense, volatile personality resembled a fierce military revolutionary. Mingus radiated an overwhelming, highly protective aura regarding the dignity of the bass instrument, demanding that it never be treated like a secondary harmonic servant. During this singular conversation, Clarke realized exactly how he wanted to structure his own upcoming professional career, deciding to approach the music business as an absolute revolutionary fighter. He vowed that whatever standard industry expectations were placed upon the bass, he would actively execute the exact opposite strategy. Armed with this fierce, newly acquired mental blueprint, he walked out of that dinner ready to upend the traditional hierarchy of the concert stage. While Clarke was busy gigging around Manhattan with established jazz giants like Horace Silver, Art Blakey, and Stan Getz, he crossed paths with an ambitious young keyboardist named Chick Corea. Corea was highly captivated by Clarke's astonishing ability to double on acoustic and electric bass with the exact same level of physical ferocity and harmonic sophistication. Recognizing that Clarke was still clinging tightly to his lingering dreams of a classical orchestral career, Corea began showing him the infinite creative freedom hidden inside electric experimental jazz. He argued that Clarke could express his complex symphonic concepts far more effectively by building an entirely new musical genre from scratch. This historic intervention successfully convinced the young bassist to permanently abandon his symphonic classical pursuits, leading directly to the co-founding of the seminal electric jazz fusion powerhouse, Return to Forever. When Return to Forever unleashed their hyper-driven, electric rock-infused jazz compositions onto the global public, they completely bypassed the traditional quiet jazz clubs. Alongside Chick Corea, drummer Lenny White, and guitarist Al Di Meola, Stanley Clarke began playing massive, sold-out arenas packed with screaming rock fans who were captivated by the band's intense instrumental velocity. Albums like Romantic Warrior and the self-titled Return to Forever achieved historic certified gold status, an unprecedented commercial feat for an instrumental jazz collective. Clarke's thunderous, driving electric lines and complex acoustic duets proved that jazz fusion could command the exact same financial and cultural power as mainstream arena rock. The band toured incessantly, recording 8 albums and winning a Grammy Award for No Mystery, while pushing their young bassist directly into the global spotlight. Yet, even with this massive group success, Clarke knew his instrument required an even grander solo showcase. In 1974, Stanley Clarke set out to codify his unique solo identity, taking a rudimentary funk technique and elevating it to a high art form. While Larry Graham of Sly and the Family Stone had famously pioneered the basic slap and pop technique, Clarke noticed that rock and funk players were heavily limited to jamming on a single repetitive pattern. Clarke brilliantly took that percussive thumb slap and adapted it to highly complex, rapidly moving jazz chord changes and modal scales. This meant he could execute blistering, syncopated funk rhythms while simultaneously navigating sophisticated harmonic structures that would leave traditional bassists completely lost. By mastering this intricate technical marriage, he transformed the percussive slap from a simple dance groove tool into a highly expressive, legitimate jazz voice. This stunning breakthrough would soon be captured on a solo track that became a permanent rite of passage for all upcoming bassists. When Clarke entered the studio to record his seminal 1976 solo album, School Days, he was joined by the legendary British recording engineer Ken Scott, famous for his historic work with the Beatles and David Bowie. As they finished tracking the iconic, hyper-driven title track, Scott purposely pushed the final bass guitar mix incredibly high, making it the undeniable focal point of the entire sonic landscape. When other studio executives and musicians heard the initial playback, a tense moment of panic swept through the room as they questioned whether the bass was mixed far too loud. Scott immediately silenced the entire room by declaring that when an instrument is performed with that specific level of virtuosity, it can never be too loud. This bold engineering decision permanently broke the traditional studio mixing rules that always forced the bass into the quiet background. The explosive commercial release of School Days cemented Stanley Clarke's status as an absolute living legend and a bona fide cultural phenomenon by the age of 25. He made undeniable history by becoming the very first jazz fusion bass player to independently headline massive global tours, completely packing out large theaters and arenas worldwide under his own name. For 10 consecutive years, he dominated the industry, winning the highly coveted Playboy Music Award for Best Bassist, alongside Rolling Stone's very first Jazzman of the Year honor. Audiences were completely breathless, watching his blistering speed, marveling at how he could look entirely relaxed while delivering a ferocious physical assault on the fingerboard. The bass was no longer a hidden, submissive anchor. It was now the glittering main attraction, resting squarely at the absolute front of the stage. Never satisfied with the physical limitations of standard instrument manufacturing, Clarke began collaborating with elite luthiers to completely alter the physical dimensions of the electric bass. In his relentless quest to play higher melodic lines that could easily compete with electric guitars and saxophones, he officially invented and popularized the Piccolo bass and the tenor bass. By utilizing shorter scale lengths, lighter wood construction, and thin strings tuned much higher than a traditional bass, these custom instruments allowed him to execute crystalline leads and dense chordal voicings. This brilliant structural innovation provided future generations of bassists with an entirely new palette of frequencies, allowing them to function as true melodic voices within a modern ensemble. Clarke effectively proved that a bassist did not have to remain trapped in the low-end mud, single-handedly rewriting the rules of instrument design to match his towering musical imagination. As his solo fame soared, Clarke's unmistakable percussive punch caught the attention of the absolute biggest icons in rock and roll history. In 1979, he teamed up with guitar virtuoso Jeff Beck for a massive, highly successful world tour that pushed both musicians to new heights of instrumental intensity. Shortly after, he was recruited by Keith Richards and Ronnie Wood of the Rolling Stones to join their legendary, star-studded tour lineup known as the New Barbarians. Rock audiences were completely stunned to see a jazz fusion bassist match the raw, gritty energy of the world's most notorious rock band without losing an ounce of his signature sophistication. These high-profile rock alliances demonstrated his incredible cultural versatility, proving his unique style possessed an aggressive, universal power that seamlessly transcended the traditional boundaries of pure jazz. In 1981, Stanley Clarke partnered with keyboard virtuoso and multi-instrumentalist George Duke to form the highly influential crossover powerhouse known as the Clarke-Duke Project. This brilliant collaboration was designed to merge their collective jazz intellect with deep, infectious rhythm and blues melodies aimed straight at the mainstream pop charts. The risk paid off spectacularly when their incredibly smooth, soulful ballad Sweet Baby exploded into a top 20 pop hit worldwide, introducing Clarke's musicality to a massive new pop audience. They recorded 3 highly successful albums and toured together for over 40 years, showcasing a rare, telepathic musical camaraderie that remains legendary within the industry. This highly successful pop era proved that Clarke wasn't just a niche speed demon, but a brilliant master of commercial melody who could craft timeless, chart-topping pop arrangements. Always searching for fresh creative challenges, Clarke turned his immense focus in the mid-1980s toward the highly competitive world of television and film scoring. He made an explosive debut on the small screen, landing an Emmy nomination for his highly eccentric, creative score for the hit program Pee-wee's Playhouse. This sudden success immediately opened the doors of Hollywood, launching a massive second career that saw him score over 75 major feature films and television projects. He served as composer, orchestrator, and conductor for era-defining blockbusters like Boyz N The Hood, John Singleton's Poetic Justice, the hit action thriller The Transporter, and the Tina Turner biopic What's Love Got to Do with It. He even composed the iconic music for Michael Jackson's multi-million-dollar short film, Remember the Time, permanently establishing himself as an elite, highly sought-after Hollywood composer. Today, Stanley Clarke holds the highly revered status of an NEA Jazz Master, the absolute highest honor bestowed upon a jazz musician within the United States. His profound cultural impact was permanently codified in September 2016, when several of his personal historic bass instruments and seminal recordings were officially inducted into the permanent collection of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. Through the Stanley Clarke Foundation, he continues to award crucial music scholarships to talented young virtuosos each year, actively giving back to the global community that embraced him. From an abandoned school bass to the halls of the Smithsonian, his journey stands as an unassailable testament to the power of pure, revolutionary artistic vision. He did not just learn how to play the bass, he quite literally reinvented its entire purpose for human history. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. See you in the next video.